Hey guys, and welcome to episode 1 of my brand new podcast. I'm Dro, and I know it's been a while. I'm back trying to do YouTube again. You're probably wondering where I've been for the last 6 months. Well, for a good chunk of that, I was picked up by Fnatic to train to be one of their analysts. Unfortunately, things didn't really go to plan, and yeah, I'm not really going to go into details, but I'm back. And this is the new sort of format that I'm going to be trying. It's a lot more loose and it's a lot more easy. It's more like a podcast than what I was doing before, where before I was scripting videos. I was heavily into writing and trying to make nice graphics to try and convey ideas and concepts and like stats and things and ideas. And I found when I was doing that I enjoyed it, but it was very stressful and it's not something that I'm naturally very good at. I'm more of a talker. I kind of riff off things that come to mind. More of a free-flowing kind of ideas sort of talker. So after having a think after my time at Fnatic ended, and you know, some ideas about where I want to go with the channel and having a bit of a break, I've decided that I'm going to come back, and this is the way I'm going to do it. So I'm going to try for maybe a weekly or bi-weekly. Is it bi-weekly or I can't remember, but maybe week or every 2 weeks have a podcast about maybe more focused on analysis, but I'll be talking about well, it will be more focused on analysis, but just kind of, you know, talking more about League of Legends as a whole. Maybe some, like this week there's a subject that's not strictly about analysis, but I'll try and tie it in. It's just a big thing that happened in the week. So that's what this is. That's where I've been. I'm back, and yeah, let's get into the first topic, which is the massive thing on patch 6.15, which is that lane swaps are dead. What did they do? Well, if we take a look at the changes, we can see that they made it harder to kill the top. They took away the bottom tower's fortification, and they made it so that top has a 5-minute really strong, I think it's 50% damage reduction, where it takes a lot less damage. Now what this just means is that the standard lanes are now back in the meta and the lane swap is dead. To emphasize this as well, they also added what is being dubbed by Doa in the LCK as first brick gold, where taking the first tower of the game will give you, I think it's 400 gold a person plus local tower gold, which is like pretty huge. I mean, you think straight off the bat that's 2k gold in your team's pocket, which is what, 2/3 of an item for one person. It's quite a big swing, which is I'll get into some negatives about things like that in a moment. But so we've got the changes to the top tower, and we've got the gold coming through. So what does this mean? This means that, like I said before, that standard lanes are now back in the meta. Lane swaps, and it's not even that they've I'll get into problems in a second. So standard lanes are back in the meta, and to me, this is a bad thing. Now, why is this a bad thing? Well, first off, lane diversity is now, and like team comp diversity is pretty narrowed. You had a very weak laner, but you'd shy them away from a matchup to get them through the first 10 minutes of the game where they could start to make an impact. That's gone. Bar Gangplank, because Gangplank is completely and utterly broken, and they still won't address champions like Gangplank in competitive scene. Although I think they are nerfing him today, as of recording this. I think on the 21st. Let's have a look. The 24th, sorry, completely out of dates. So they're nerfing Gangplank today. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, champions that need a bit of a handhold, you can't play them anymore. They're gone, absolutely gone. And also on top of that, farming junglers are now gone. And we're back to this kind of Season 5 kind of meta where it's all round, especially with the new dragons. The game is so heavily focused about your bot lane making plays through your bot lane and making plays with the other sides of the map into your bot lane. So, for example, the top pick now in mid lane, not due to her stupid wave clear, is Talia. Because Talia can just say, I'm going top lane or I'm going bot lane. And the same in the top lane with Shen. I think Shen in EU and NA has some, well, maybe not NA, because they do weird picks, but EU is 100% pick ban rate, and I think it's the same in Korea or something. Like, Shen is just an absolute monster in terms of like what he can do in this current meta. And it's very sad to see, because I really felt with the lane swap meta for lane diversity that you were seeing very weird things come through sometimes. Now, the lane swap meta wasn't without its faults. For me, the main fault was that you wouldn't do anything else. There was no answers. There was no kind of, well, you're deciding that, you know, you want to push second tier tower, like when you rotated, say, after the second transition, when you take the first tower into the first transition base and take the second one, that's the second transition. And then after that, you'd then say, well, maybe we can push for the second one. We've manipulated the waves well enough. And the other team basically had to say, okay, we'll do the same. Because it was all about tempo plays. But the problem came from that there was no kind of, oh, well, you're taking that. Okay, well, we'll go in and we'll take all your jungle and we'll do all this and we'll pressure another lane, or we'll take another objective to counterpoint. So yes, you might have a bit more gold. We've got this strong buff. Especially later on into this season, they really got rid of a lot of the choices and decisions that came with the lane swap. And it became this quite formulaic, not saying it wasn't hard, not saying there wasn't choices, but it became very formulaic, and I can see why people thought it was boring, even though I disagree with the fact it was boring, because I think it made the games as a whole a lot more open. You had this very, very big thing where you had to effectively risk your top laner, or your bot laner if you put them in the long lane, to ganks. Like, if the jungler, after 10-15 minutes, if the jungler was sneaky enough, you could easily get a gank off onto the enemy top laner through this long lane if they pushed slightly too far. Like, there was a lot of risk involved, and this is now just gone for this kind of very, very, I think it's very bland, this very kind of formulaic sort of, okay, you pick X, I pick Y, because Y maybe not counters, but does well into, and you know, there's not so much this kind of, oh, okay, so we're forming this sort of comp where we've got these styles and we've got this thing. It's basically just like, what's power pick in mid lane? Talia. Okay, what counters Talia? Well, nothing really, but what can go up against her? Well, Aurelion Sol. Cool, you know, or this other pick. You know, it's quite, to me, it's quite bland, and especially with the jungle, with the jungle diversity has been so crippled to the point where I don't think people really even realise how crippled. I mean, of course, there's always going to be S tier picks. There was always going to be picks, say Graves, that are just really, really strong. But that style, that kind of niddly Graves style of just saying, you know what, laners, play a bit safe, but 15 minutes, I'm going to come out of this jungle and I'm going to take this game by the reins, and I'm going to shove it down their throats with my lead. You can't do that anymore. The game has completely and utterly changed from that direction. Now, I'm not trying to say, oh, we should bring back that style. That style was better. No, what I want is the option to have both. You should be able to say, we've got a Cogmore, we don't want to play into your standard lanes. But the team should be able to say, we want standard lanes, we're going to try and influence you into those standard lanes. I think, was it the start of Tier 6 had this quite nice balance where it was almost like a poker game where you had like teams kind of going, oh, will they lane stop, won't they lane stop, will they fake out the lane swap, what's going to go on? You know, oh, we've got Australia lanes. That's a term you don't hear, like you didn't hear for probably the whole of summer, was Australia lanes. Like there was no kind of fake outs, there was no kind of, you know, where teams would kind of go, we'll double bluff you and just go bot with our Cogmore because you think we'll lane swap, or we'll fake the top laner up top side, or you know, something like this. It basically just came down to like, well, it's too hard to stop a lane swap, so the lane swap has got the advantage and they're going to win. It should be a negative now to lane swap, but a buff later on. And the problem was it was too much of an advantage to lane swap, and now they've gone completely the other way and just gone, no, like, you're not doing it. Which is a bigger issue into itself, which I might get onto later with what the other topic's going to be. But I mean, in my eyes, the big things to do with the sad thing to do with lane swaps being dead is it strangles champion diversity and pick bans, making them very formulaic and boring. It makes the game very snowbally with these first brick golds, where I think something like in EU, the first 8 games or something in playoffs were all won by the team who took first tower. Now, to me, that should be absolutely worrying, that like you should either get rid of this buff or like half it or something, because it's too impactful in the game. Like, anyone can see that it's too impactful. And also something else that I think people haven't realized is that not having, like, people going, oh yeah, well, we've got standard lanes back, haha, this is so great, but it actually makes the people who play the game, the professionals, are very good at the game, and unless they make some stupid mistake, there's no 1v1 kills. This is what Riot wants. Riot sits there and goes, oh, we want the game to be more exciting, and we're gonna, the competitive scene to be more exciting, but basically it just makes people so risk averse. There's no, like, why would you try for a 1v1? The positives do not outweigh the negatives. If you, like, say even you go in for a bad trade and you come off the worst, that's 2 waves of creeps you've lost, which then puts you further behind. You don't necessarily even have to die, you just have a bad trade and that's it. You're not getting outplayed, you're just screwing up, and why would you screw up? So the positives do not outweigh the negatives in trying to go for like a first blood kill. Does that mean they should increase first blood gold? Maybe. But I think the way the lane swap was at the start of the season, so season 6 as a thing, where it was a bit more of a poker game, it was a bit more of a kind of a battle of wits, and a bit more of a guessing game, and it was kind of, okay, we'll take the hit now, but we'll get you later on with our Cogmore or our whatever, Jinx. It was an interesting. I think it was a very interesting dynamic, and it was a very, very. But I mean, they let it go too far. But the problem the problem I have with a lot of Riot's balancing when it comes to these sort of things is, instead of giving you, like, they're complaining that you're a fat kid, and instead of like giving you less food, they're just not giving you any food. Like, they're just saying no food for you. Which has its own massive problems when it comes to the competitive scene. One really big point that has been echoed quite a lot by people like Monte Cristo and other versed people in the league analysis scene is that there's teams now who got to playoffs with this kind of, we're really good at the macro game, we're a good team, we might not be the best laners, but hey, that's not the meta at the moment. And it's not even this slow change that came into the game, where slowly but surely standard lanes coming back. It's literally like one night Riot came up, flicked a switch and said, standard lanes, boys. It's not the best way to balance a game. You shouldn't go from one extreme to the other, and Riot does this time and again. And it's very sad for the competitive scene, because something that was... This isn't just like our harder they get to play the game or whatever. This is like people's livelihoods at stake that are completely like dictated by this mentality towards balancing it's very slash and burn. There's no kind of like, we'll just take a little bit off there. Does that fix the problem? Does that like weigh it up a little bit? Or even if they are going to go for the slash and burn approach, the timing of this is very wrong. It's very, very wrong. It's been addressed as well by other people in vlogs and in articles and such. But like with Worlds is another example from last year with like the Mordekaiser patch, where it was just like there's this whole new dynamic in this OP champion, and Red Side gets, I don't even think Red Side had a ban last year. It was Mordekaiser, Gangplank, Fiora or something. Like, you had to ban those 3 champions on Red Side, or have some sort of cheese, or just let them all through and try and get 2 on the back end. It's quite an awful dynamic to have, that Riot are willing to just completely upend their game instead of saying, they spout this this nonsense about competitive integrity, but when you actually hold this phrase up to the light, they don't hold to their own creed. They don't practice what they preach. They talk about competitive integrity, but there's no boosts. There's no they change things at the drop of a hat. They'll other issues that I really am not clued into with ownership and whatnot. I'm not going to go into that. This is more about analysis. But the way you're expecting these professionals who are dealt. It's like if you have a game, like these people trained all their life to play football, and then all of a sudden you make like FIFA one day decides square balls are where we're at. We're going to have square footballs. That's the way it's going. Like everything people knew is now a lie, basically. And that doesn't mean there won't be great square ballers. It just means that, like, the people who've trained all their life to play football, learning how to curve the ball properly, how to make, pinpoint crosses, are now, like, left out on their ass. And that, to me, is just not... It's not right. It's not the way you should do things. And Riot, as always, are very slow to react to these things and very, they seem very cautious after making a change, but making a change, they're very kind of haphazard. Now, this is the part where if I get going in this in the future, I'd probably have an ad break because it's between my topics, but I don't actually have one. So instead, I'll tell you about something that you should do in like a little kind of snippet for people, like a little advert for something in the game that you should do. And this week's advert will be Executioner's Calling. Now, if you're an AD-based auto-attacking champion, and even if you're playing something like an Aram, and you notice that they have a Soraka, or they've got a Mundo or a Vladimir, buy an Executioner's Calling. It's 800G and you'll win team fights. It's a no-brainer. I mean, you're effectively reducing the effectiveness of that person's tankiness or sustain by 50%. For doing absolutely no difference. And it's not like 800 gold is a lot of money. So, if you're against these sort of champions, buy an Executioner's Calling. So the second topic for today's podcast is the statement released by Riot Tryndamere regarding, I think something Reginald said, something about finance. So I'm just going to read the statement first. And... I'm gonna talk about my feelings and discuss it a little bit. So, love me some Reggie, but if he's so concerned about the financial health of his players, maybe he should spend some more of the millions he has made / makes from League of Legends on paying them instead of investing in other esports where he's losing money. Reggie is generally one of the good guy team owners, but there is still a long way to go to help out all of our owners into a better state where the balance of power between players and owners is a bit more equitable. It's not our call, nor should it be, to determine market pricing of players, but when owners don't want to sell out for the top talent, that's a tricky problem. We've done a lot historically to help support the bottom end of ecosystems to help minimise the scenarios where bad teams / owners can exploit players, and we look forward to continuing to do more to help out the other ends of the spectrum too, as for stars. Re-patch timings. Agree, we need to be more cognizant of it, and that last year's timing for the Juggernaut update was suboptimal. This year's, though, we intentionally prioritised game health and viewer experience, cool bot lane fights and early aggression over the ability for teams / coaches to field safer comps by lane swapping. We tend to think this has worked well based on the amount of 5-game series we've seen and how bloody games have been in general. It's not like the big adaptation for players to do standard lanes. Coaches / owners are complaining about it because it makes it harder to find certain lineups as skill deficits that may be hid on their roster. In our opinion, like the above, they need to continue to develop talent and pay them. We do not mind at all if there is a massive delta in comparison between the top players and rookies. So if you're Doublelift / Bifrost and you can do well in standard lanes against the best in the world, don't be shy about recognising your value in negotiations with your team owner. Now, I'm going to go through this bit by bit from the top. So, the first bit just is really cringe because, and the start of the second bit as well, because this is the tone you always get from Riot. It's like, hey, we're one of the guys, and you don't have to be scared of us. We're like a business, and we're trying to like make all this money and use the platform to advertise, but like don't ignore that. Like, let's wear a nice hat, you know, like, hey, look, we're cool, you know, hey, like, it's really kind of like, it's really cringe. It's so cringe, in my opinion. I think if you're a governing body, which effectively they are effectively like FIFA of league, right, or the FA, using football as another example, or, you know, the World Tennis Organization or whatever they, you know, I don't know what they're called, but, you know, like they're literally a governing body, so they're up on a mountaintop, but they're almost like Zeus coming down from Mount Olympus and like hanging with his homeboys. Like, it makes no sense. It's like him going like, "Oh, sup, dudes," and it's like, Zeus, like, you know, my wife's dying, leave me alone. You know, it's before, you know, it's like 300 AD, like, we don't have antibiotics, and he's like, hey, let's go partying. It's completely bananas. So if he's like, this whole statement about like teams needing more, you know, oh well, maybe you should pay them more, like, I'm not going to go into details about like anything that I might know, you know, behind the scenes at Fnatic. I'm not going to go into any of that details, but I know that like other analysts on other teams, like, they get paid, and you have to ask yourself, like, if they're getting bursaries from, for example, you know, they're getting bursaries for 5 players, maybe 6 including a sub or whatever, like, so let's say 6 players and a coach. Well, for every team you need a general manager, you need maybe something to do with I guess that's a general manager, but you need like a general manager, and analysts. Now, where does that money come from? I mean, Riot basically pays people, I think it's something like 12k a split for all these people, which is like a decent amount of money. If that's like I have strong opinions on when it comes to like you should do something you love and the money should not be a problem. Like, yes, try and be comfortable with what you're doing. If money is your objective, like, I don't think you should get into something like esports, because I think it's more of a thing about love than it is for, like, at the moment anyway, it's not. I mean, there should be more things and blah blah blah, but that's a different discussion for another day. But I mean, like, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that Riot don't fund for, but the game almost demands. And one of these, you know, I have a strong opinion about this, is analysts. Like, the game now needs so many analysts per team, because there's so many nuances that need to be tracked. I mean, there's including LMS, which I believe deserves its title now. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 major regions and quite a few like little regions as well. And to say for example, teams employ 1 analyst, it is completely like, you cannot watch every single game, make notes, make detailed plans, and make like documents for teams as 1 person. You'll die. Like, there's not enough hours in the day. Your brain can't concentrate for that long. You will die. Like with the way that the teams are like kind of, they're looking more and more to kind of like, you know, be more perfect and smooth out more edges. It's like, there needs to be money coming into the scene somehow, so teams can say, all right, we'll build up our infrastructure, we'll do this, we'll do that. Because the way it is at the moment, that I think for a lot of people trying to start out, like myself, it's like, unless you get a lucky break with getting like full ride on a team, you're going to work really hard for very little, and you're going to, like, teams will usually just do this kind of merry-go-round in esports, because it's this really tricky situation where there's not much money actually like around to like get your peripheral people in your team, and there's kind of like, there's only so much experience to go about. Now, usually what seems to be happening is, bar a team such as like some big American teams where there's a lot more money, like, not much new talent coming in. It's usually like, this coach has gone from this team onto this other team, who's like another tier team, or this, you know, it's quite sad to see. Like, there's not much of a big injection from the bottom up of new talent coming through in terms of like, yeah, in terms of analysis, or, you know, you get people on YouTube, you get some good people on YouTube, but teams aren't willing to take the risk, and that's the problem. And without risk, you know, it will stagnate, and the scene will become this very kind of tepid water where you're just playing this merry-go-round of like, you know, well, this team didn't work out, so I'll go to this team. Why have you got the job in that team? Well, because I've had this year-long experience with this other team, you know. So I think as well. So let's go through to the second. So let's go through to the second statement, which is talking a bit about, you know, talking about like where you know, where's the money basically. Like I think these, like, from everything I've researched about where money actually comes from in terms of esports, like League makes dickle. Like League really makes very little money in comparison, because there's no prize pools. There's no, well, there is, but like they're very small. There's no like big sort of tournaments that like have major prize pools, and there's not really this kind of large kind of, you know, big boost of money that comes through every kind of, you know, thing. Now, I'm not trying to take away from what Riot's doing here. I actually really like the system where they have, you know, well, everyone gets a share of this chunk of money, and it's more about kind of, you're part of this league, here's a nice lump of money, do with it what you will. But I mean, there needs to be this development in it, like, otherwise, like, League of Legends esport will die. Now, this harks back to this harks back to what I think a major problem is with the way people perceive in what Riot is doing, and it's something that I've noticed for a very long time, is that Riot's very flippant about the game and its health when it comes to making money. And people seem to think that Riot's always the good guy, and Riot is the, you know, Riot's this kind of like shining beacon in like things. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't know if you've seen Monte Cristo's video about this, but he mentioned some interesting points about like, well, if a skin's played on LCS, they probably like have a metric to do how much money that is. And this, I mean, this is basically what they're about. They're a company. They're out there to make money. Is what they do. But people seem to think that they're this kind of like you know, like I said earlier, oh, there's this really nice guy, and you know, or it's really kind of sad to see that people are almost sucked into this kind of illusion that they're not this company. They're this massive global corporation. Like, they're gonna make money. Like, yes, they've given us Hextech crafting. Yes, they've given us this, but the actual changes we need in a game from a multi-billion pound dollar whatever corporation is honestly shocking. The fact that like anything gets changed in this game is like pulling teeth. Like, it's all built off of this kind of really kind of backwater kind of hodgepodge together system that only now is starting to see changes with the new champion select and, you know, the new thing. It just to me shows where the actual priorities lie, and at the end of the day, the priorities lie in the same kind of thing that like freemium games do, where you don't actually matter, but the people who spend $200 a month on this game buying skins are the ones that they care about. So they want to get them watching LCS, they'll get them to buy all the new champions that look really nice with RP, and then they'll get them to buy the skins that are double lift played, you know, Project Lucian. Oh, that looked really cool when he did that pentakill. That's what they care about. They care about getting bums in seats and getting people through the door to basically to make money. And I you know, like, I can't believe that people think it's any other way. It's quite naive, I think. But is there anything wrong with that? No, it's their game. But to think anything else will happen is quite a shock. I mean, like I said before, like, the back-end system of the game has not been updated in so long. They've added nice things to it. They've given it new glosses of paint, but the actual, you know, like meat and potatoes of the game has so many problems, so many bugs, so many problems, so many weird interactions that have been left. I mean, biggest one that I can think of is like Alistar WQ combo. Wasn't meant to be a thing, but Spaghetti Code made it a thing, and now it's his main stake. But instead of like, is that a bad thing? No, but that's still an example of spaghetti that happens in this game. And, you know, the game is built very badly, like, in terms of, like, interactions and stuff. And they've basically just put new paint on it for so long. and it kind of shows where the priorities are. The priorities are in keeping this nice face on the company, making esports look nice, and making and making like how to put it. So they have a nice face on the company, like look at all the great things we're doing. They're having, you know, and then selling and like kind of and then selling things like is that bad? No, but that's the reality of it. And to not think that, I think you're being quite silly, really. And then talking about the end stuff, about patch timings, it just goes to show exactly what I was saying before with their it's a marketing ploy. Like the whole thing about the LCS is people have made their living off of a marketing ploy. Like Riot really doesn't actually care like about things. I mean, I'm going to talk about something. I'll probably talk about this again maybe next week with my next one, or the week after, depending on my schedule and such. But I mean, I'm going to go down the past couple of patches and talk about how that might look for Worlds and such things. But I mean, there's big changes in there that are, again, like what I was talking earlier about, like narrowing the pools and stuff. And it's obvious that, like, it's obvious to me that Riot didn't like this lane swap meta because people were actively, maybe not actively turning off, but maybe their sales numbers dropped for skins that they released or something that they like of big champions that were being played. Or maybe the big champions that are being played aren't profitable. I mean, there's a big thing that people don't. I notice this all the time, and people I talk to often very kind of, I kind of, you know, they come alert to it. Which is, I mean, a big example is this current patch coming up. Is there's a big Ezreal skin coming out. I think it's like 1350. It's got some nice graphics, which I mean is another issue for another day about graphics and proposed power. But I mean, it's got a high Riot cost, high Rito tax, and they're buffing Ezreal, which is like, oh, what a surprise! And I think a couple of patches ago they buffed like they always seem to. It's something, I know it's coincidental, and there's a lot of coincidence to this, but I've seen it too many times over the last couple of years to think it's so much of a coincidence that like say they release 3 skins a month, and one of those skins will be a very strong champion at the time. So, for example, Project Ash has got something like a 55% win rate or something in solo queue. I think it's something ridiculous like that. But Project Ash got released, which actually, in fact, makes her stronger as well, due to like horrible things, which I might touch upon next week. I might make a note of that to touch upon that with skin dynamics and things. But I mean, they keep doing this where they keep releasing a skin, and then either the patch before or the patch it comes out, there's quite a nice buff to it, which pushes it up the ladder. I mean, or they're just a generally strong champion. I mean, Echo at the moment is a ridiculously strong champion because of his bananas kit. And he just got a really nice skin for like the 3rd time or something. I think he's got something like 3 additional skins, and he only came out like a year ago. Yeah, it's just. I mean, I'm sure. Well, I mean, take today. Today's the 24th for me, recording this in Europe, and they've announced, I think it's Championship Z, with this really wishy-washy kind of, this kind of really wishy-washy sort of, oh no, it's for champion, like, because the last prerogative was, it's for a champion that influenced this season's meta, and now they've kind of backtracked that and said, well, it's just a champion that has, over the years, competitively, shaped meta, so now they can literally do whatever they want. And if I'm not mistaken, after Worlds, isn't the Assassin update coming out? Where people can make flashy plays on Zed, and there's a nice skin coming out. Just food for thought. So I think I'll leave it there, guys. I'm glad to be back. It's been fun doing this. Bit more of an easy sort of video. This is what I want to keep doing in the future. I'm not a big fan of, like I said before, scripts and stuff. So this is what I want to do. I want to try and make this a weekly or every 2 weekly podcast, and still don't have a name, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. So if you've got an idea for a name, leave it in the section below. Maybe I'll give you a shout out or something if you give me a good name idea. So have a good week, and I'll see you again.